Hello, grade 9 learners and educators. My name is Linda Hackner. I represent the Cape Town Holocaust and Genocide Centre. And we are bringing to you the section in your curriculum that deals with the failure of the Weimar, the rise of Nazi Germany, the outbreak of World War II, Holocaust, people's experiences, and rescue and resistance. Today, we're going to continue talking about how the Nazi Party creates itself as a racial state, creates Germany as a racial state. And we're going to see how the Nazi regime gets the population to see Jewish people and others that they consider to be sort of unworthy as the other or as separate. Just a little recap. Remember, in the last unit, we looked at how the Nazis saw different people as being inferior because of blood. The Nazis believed that they had pure so-called Aryan blood and that everybody else's blood was inferior and should not be mixed with theirs. So that's just a little recap. Now, how do they go about creating the other or creating the separate or creating the scapegoat? Well, firstly, as I've just explained, they categorize on the basis of blood. Secondly, they launch major propaganda campaigns, propaganda, brainwashing. I'll talk more about that later. Thirdly, they pass laws. You know, it's a very strange thing, grade 9s. When people see that something is law, they tend to believe it or to follow it. And finally, they create a situation where the population is separated and isolated from one another. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail on categorization on the basis of blood because we've discussed this. So they teach this to children by creating charts about whose grandmother was Jewish and how many grandparents you have with Jewish blood, and by teaching race science in school, which of course is a nonsense. Propaganda aimed at the youth was very important to the Nazis. So what they did was they created little books for children. This one is called The Poisonous Mushroom. And the poisonous mushroom is actually, in this book, the Jew. Jewish people are to be avoided. They are poisonous. They are dangerous. Be careful of them. They create little board games. This one is called Judenhaus. Get the Jews out. And if you can get 6 or more Jewish businesses or people to leave Germany, then you've won the game. They create for so-called pure German youth 2 youth movements, one for boys, one for girls. The boys is called the Hitler Youth. The girls is called the League of German Girls. And these youth movements use constant propaganda to let these young German people feel that they are the next to rule, not Germany, but the world, and that Jewish people need to be gotten rid of, no matter what. And so they use propaganda. They teach the boys to be soldiers. They teach the girls to be mothers and housewives. And of course, education in schools. So these little children, from when they're tiny, are taught to make an oath to Hitler, to do the racist Nazi salute. And this goes on year after year after year when the Nazis come into power. So you can see how the youth will really have their minds and ideologies shaped by the Nazis. Propaganda aimed at adults, same thing. Posters, magazines, newspapers, radios. So this poster is telling people you shouldn't be friendly with Black people. It diminishes your racial pride. This poster is saying German men are strong, they're brave, they're well built, and they're ready to fight for land. The eagle in the background is the eagle of war. He's looking towards the east where he's going to conquer land. And she is in his arms with his child. She's going to make babies to populate this land. Huge rallies were held where everybody sang the same songs, marched in time, shouted the racist Nazi slogans, made the racist Nazi salute, so that people understand that they were all thinking the same way. They were all doing the same thing, and that to think differently was not good. Radios, which was another form of communication in those days, and a very powerful one, were given to people who were not Jewish and taken from people who were Jewish. And propaganda programs were broadcast all the time. Propaganda music, propaganda radio songs, etc. Laws were passed. Now, grade 9s, the Nazis, when they came to power, took over the legal system, took over the church system, took over the education system, so that the law sat beneath the power of the government. And laws were passed all the time. Laws were passed to separate people. So, for example, no longer could people sit on the same park benches. This image says nur für Juden, only for Jews to sit. And you can look at her, she's covering her face, and I want you to think why she might be doing that. Jews were not allowed to go to beaches. Norderney was a little beach town which had been frequented by Jews for generations, and now there was a sign outside saying Norderney is Judenfrei, free of Jews. This is an image of a university campus, University, I think, of Munich, and Jewish professors were kicked out, Jewish students were kicked out, and if they tried to enter, they were barred from entering. So it wasn't only schools, but universities that got rid of Jewish teachers and students. And of course, shops and businesses, if they were Jewish owned and Jewish run, they were marked as such, and so-called pure Germans were not allowed to enter those shops or buy from those shopkeepers. So you can see how this would work to separate people. The Nuremberg laws of 1935 called that because they were passed at a rally in Nuremberg, which was a city in Germany. The law of the Reich citizen, well, this was very, very bad for Jewish people because it removed their German citizenship. They were no longer citizens. They were subjects of the state, which meant they were at the mercy of the state. They had no rights like everybody else did, and they were no longer citizens. So they could be treated any way the government wanted to treat them. The law for the protection of German blood, here we come back to the blood again, and honor was passed. This meant that marriage between people who were Jewish Germans and non-Jewish Germans was forbidden. Marriages that had taken place, the Germans government wanted them to annul, and of course no sexual relations could take place. So this led to the separation and isolation of Jewish people in Germany. So they tried to immigrate, they tried to get out. Here you have Jewish people queuing to get visas to leave Germany. It was very strange, grade 9. The Nazis wanted them to go, but then on the other hand, made it difficult for them to go. So a conference was called in a place called Evian in France. The American president called the conference. 32 countries attended, and all of them said no. They didn't want any Jewish refugees. So you can see this cartoon. There's a man sitting in the middle of a swastika. In the middle of a swastika are signs pointing north, south, east, and west saying go. And at the end of the swastikas, at the end of the globe, it says stop. Nobody wanted them. An example of this really was the St. Louis. That's the name of the boat upon which you see all these people, Jewish people. There were about 900 of them. They all had landing certificates to get off the boat in Cuba, legal. When they got to Cuba, the Cuban government said they're not honoring those landing certificates and they're not letting them disembark. So the boat left Cuba and sailed to Florida in America. And when they got to Florida, the American government said, no, we are not letting you disembark. So the boat had to turn around and go back to Germany, where the majority of people on that boat perished. Kristallnacht, 9th and 10th of November 1938, was called, the translation is Night of the Broken Glass, and all across Germany there were riots where Jewish shops, Jewish synagogues, Jewish homes were smashed and burnt and violated, and about 30,000 Jewish men were arrested simply because they were Jewish and marched off to prisons. Now I want you to look at these images, grade 9s. I want you to look at the people who are looking at the people who are being marched away. I want you to think about them. What were they thinking? Why were they standing there? Why is a mother letting her little boy march alongside? Why are people standing with their bicycles they've ridden from home to come and have a look at a synagogue that is in flames? They're standing with their hands in their pockets watching this happen. Why? And I want you to think about that in terms of what we've spoken about up until now. And next unit, we will take things further in Unit 4. And I want to thank you very much for watching this unit. And I look forward to seeing you again in Unit 4. Bye-bye, everybody.